Each year on October 31st, Halloween is a holiday that is commemorated. In 2022, that day will be a Monday. The custom has its roots in the ancient Celtic holiday of Samhain, when people would dress up and build bonfires to fend off ghosts. Gregory III, the 8th century pope, established November 1st as a day to celebrate All Saints. Soon, elements of Samhain's customs were absorbed into All Saints' Day. All Hallows Eve, then later Halloween, was the name of the preceding evening. Halloween has changed throughout the years to become a day filled with festivities like trick or treating, carving jack-o'-lanterns, festive get-togethers, dressing up, and enjoying sweets. The history of Halloween. The ancient Celtic celebration of Samhain is where Halloween got its start. On November 1st, the Celts, who lived 2,000 years ago in a region that is today primarily Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France, celebrated the beginning of their new year. On this day, summer, harvest, and the gloomy, chilly winter, which was sometimes a season of fatalities for people, came to an end. The night before the new year, according to the Celts, the lines separating the living from the dead become hazy. On the evening of October 31st, they observed Samhain, a time when it was thought that the spirits of the dead made a comeback to the planet. Celts believed that the presence of the supernatural spirits facilitated easier future prophecies by the Druids or Celtic priests, in addition to causing difficulties and harming harvests. These forecasts served as a significant source of solace for a people wholly reliant on the unpredictable natural environment during the long, dark winter. Druids constructed enormous sacred bonfires to serve as a reminder of the occasion, and people gathered around them to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic gods. The Celts attempted to tell one another's fortunes while dressing up in costumes made typically of animal heads and skins. In order to assist safeguard them during the upcoming cold, they relit their earlier put-out hearth fires from the sacred bonfire after the celebration. The majority of Celtic lands were under Roman control by the year 43. Over the course of their 400-year reign over the Celtic nations, two Roman-inspired holidays were mixed with the customary holiday of Samhain. The first was Feralia, a Roman rite that takes place in late October to remember the deceased. Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees, was celebrated on the second day. The apple is the emblem of Pomona, which likely explains why the custom of bobbing for apples on Halloween has persisted across time. Samhain was also the time of Pomona's festival. All Saints' Day. Pope Boniface IV dedicated the Pantheon in Rome to all Christian martyrs on May 13th, AD 609, and the Western Church adopted the Catholic Feast of All Martyrs' Day. Later, Pope Gregory III changed the date of the celebration from May 13th to November 1st and broadened the event to include all martyrs and saints. By the 9th century, Christianity's influence had reached the Celtic nations, where it progressively assimilated with and replaced pre-Christian Celtic practices. The Church declared November 2nd All Souls' Day in the year 1000 as a day to remember the deceased. Today, it is generally accepted that the Church tried to replace the Celtic Feast of the Dead with a comparable Church-approved celebration. Similar to Samhain, All Souls' Day was observed with large bonfires, parades, and dressed as saints, angels, and demons. The holiday known as All Saints' Day is also known as All Hallows or All Hallowmas, and the night before it, known as Samhain in the Celtic faith, started to be termed All Hallows Eve, and then, eventually, Halloween. Halloween arrives in America. Colonial New England's strict Protestant religious beliefs severely restricted the Halloween festivities. In Maryland and the southern colonies, Halloween was considerably more common. A uniquely American interpretation of Halloween started to take shape when the beliefs and traditions of various European ethnic groups and American Indians converged. The first harvest festivities were play parties, which were open-air gatherings. Neighbors would sing and dance while exchanging ghost stories and fortunes. As part of the historical Halloween celebrations, ghost stories were also told and various forms of mischief were made. Annual fall celebrations were widespread by the middle of the 19th century, but not all of the country had adopted Halloween. America was inundated with new immigrants in the second part of the 19th century. The millions of Irish who emigrated from the Irish potato famine were among the new immigrants who helped make Halloween a national holiday. Trick-or-treating history. By adapting European customs, Americans started dressing up for Halloween and knocking on doors to ask for food or money. This practice eventually developed into the modern-day trick-or-treat custom. Young girls thought that by performing tricks with yarn, apple parings, or mirrors on Halloween they could predict the name or look of their future husband. In America, there was a movement in the late 1800s to transform Halloween into a celebration that was more about neighborhood, gatherings and community interaction than it was about ghosts, tricks, and witchcraft. Halloween celebrations for both kids and adults became the most popular activity at the turn of the century. Parties with games, seasonal delicacies, and festive attire. Newspapers and local authorities urged parents to remove anything frightening or grotesque from Halloween celebrations. By the beginning of the 20th century, Halloween had mostly lost its superstitious and religious connotations as a result of these efforts. Halloween celebrations. Halloween had evolved into a secular yet neighborhood-focused event by the 1920s and 1930s, with parades and town-wide Halloween festivities serving as the main attractions. During this period, vandalism started to ruin several celebrations in many localities, despite the best efforts of many schools and towns. By the 1950s, local officials had successfully reduced vandalism, and Halloween had changed into a celebration mostly for children. The birth boom of the 1950s produced a large number of small children. Thus, celebrations migrated from town municipal buildings to classrooms and homes where they could be accommodated more readily. Trick-or-treating, a long-standing tradition, also saw a revival between 1920 and 1950. A community might celebrate Halloween together by going trick-or-treating quite cheaply. Families may theoretically stop tricks from being played on them by giving the neighborhood kids little presents. A fresh American custom was therefore established, and it has since flourished. With an estimated $6 billion in annual spending, Halloween is now the second largest commercial holiday in the United States, behind Christmas. Halloween in movies. Scary Halloween films have a lengthy history of becoming box office successes. To continue the topic of commercial success, the Halloween franchise, based on the 1978 original picture directed by John Carpenter and starring Donald Pleasence, Nick Castle, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Tony Moran, is one example of classic Halloween movies. In the movie Halloween, a young boy named Michael Myers kills his 17-year-old sister and is put in jail. However, on Halloween night, as a teenager, he escapes and goes in search of his old house and a new victim. 2018 saw the debut of a Halloween sequel starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Nick Castle. In 2021, Halloween Kills, the follow-up and 12th overall installment in the Halloween franchise, was released. Halloween is regarded as a classic horror movie, even down to its eerie score, and it served as an inspiration for later well-known slasher movies including Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th, Hocus Pocus, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Beetlejuice, and It's the Great Pumpkin. Charlie Brown are a few further family-friendly Halloween films. All Souls Day and Soul Cakes. Trick-or-treating on Halloween in America likely originated with early All Souls Day parades in England. Poor people would beg for food during the festivities, and in exchange for their vow to pray for the family's deceased relatives, families would offer them treats called soul cakes. The church promoted the distribution of soul cakes as a replacement for the traditional custom of leaving food and wine out for wandering spirits. Children eventually adopted the custom of going a-souling, where they would visit the homes in their neighborhood and receive ale, food, and money. Halloween costume wear is a custom with both European and Celtic roots. Winter in those days was an ominous and frightening season. For the numerous people who were scared of the dark, food supplies frequently ran low, and the few winter days were filled with continual anxiety. People used to fear leaving their homes on Halloween since it was thought that ghosts returned to the physical world at that time. People would wear masks when they left their homes after dark so that the ghosts would believe them to be other ghosts in order to escape being recognized by these ghosts. On Halloween, people used to leave bowls of food outside their homes to pacify ghosts and deter them from seeking to enter. Halloween black cats and ghosts. Halloween has long been a mysterious, magical, and superstitious occasion. It started as a Celtic end-of-summer event when people felt particularly connected to their departed loved ones. They burned lights to aid loved ones in returning to the spirit realm, put gifts on doorsteps and by the side of the road, and set places at the dinner table for these amiable spirits. The ghosts of Halloween today are frequently portrayed as being more terrifying and evil, and our traditions and superstitions are also more frightful. We avoid going near black cats out of concern that they'll curse us. This notion has its origins in the Middle Ages, when a lot of people thought that witches disguised themselves as black cats to evade detection. We make an effort to avoid using ladders as footholds. It's possible that this superstition originated with the ancient Egyptians, who thought triangles were sacred. It also may have something to do with the fact that walking under a leaning ladder tends to be fairly unsafe. And especially around Halloween, we make an effort to avoid damaging mirrors, stepping on potholes, and spilling salt. Halloween dating and less popular rituals. What, however, about the customs and rituals associated with Halloween that the trick-or-treaters of today have completely forgotten? Many of these outmoded rites have an emphasis on the present rather than the past, and the living rather than the dead. On Halloween night, a matchmaking cook in 18th century Ireland may conceal a ring in her mashed potatoes in the hopes that the diner who found it would find true love. In Scotland, matchmakers advised young women to name a hazelnut for each potential suitor before throwing the nuts into the flames. According to the legend, the nut that burned to ashes instead of popping or exploding symbolized the girl's future husband. In certain iterations of this myth, the reverse was true. The burning nut represented a fleeting love. Another legend claimed that a young woman would dream of her future spouse if she consumed a sugary mixture comprised of walnuts, hazelnuts, and nutmeg before going to bed on Halloween night. Young girls tried to predict their futures by peering at egg yolks floating in a bowl of water, tossing apple peels over their shoulders in the hopes that the peels would fall to the ground in the shape of their future husband's initials, holding candles in front of mirrors in darkened rooms, and looking over their shoulders for their husbands' faces. Other ceremonies featured more rivalry. Occasionally, the first partygoer to find a burr while searching for chestnuts would also be the first to get hitched. Others would have the first successful apple bobber come down the aisle. Of all, each of these Halloween superstitions depends on the benevolence of the very same spirits whose presence the early Celts felt so deeply. Whether we're seeking love counsel or hoping to ward off 7 years of bad luck, we wish all happy Halloween. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the notification bell to subscribe and leave a comment below. Thank you. See you in the next video.